Hey, what's happening, all you outsiders? I'm Duuz-Diz-Din, and I'm finally back with another Young Justice Outsiders episode review. This time it's Season three's Episode 18, titled Early Warning, where we really start to kind of get into the motion of the Outsiders team for the most part, which is really not what I was expecting when I heard this title, Young Justice Outsiders, but I'm enjoying it for the most part. In today's society, what the original Outsiders team was, this group kind of embodies that for the most part, to a certain degree, as we open up with Courtney Whitmore actually, continuing to cover the movement of We Are All Outsiders as it's trending on social media. Oh man, that's such a weird thing to associate with this kind of stuff, but it's so topical. Like that's the world we live in. Things trend. It's all about the Twitter generation and all that good stuff. Is that even a thing, Twitter generation? I really have to wonder. But if you're not on Twitter, you're at least on Instagram or you're on Snapchat more than likely. Snapchat is like the big thing nowadays, so I can understand that. And hashtags have still continued to be the primary source of how you follow certain things. So we are all outsiders continues to trend and be in the news. Meanwhile, we see that Beast Boy and Brion are getting ready to set off, as we also end up finding out that Blue Beetle Jaime as well as Bart Allen will not be in attendance, as we come to actually find out, which really shocked me, that Joan Garrick passed away. We saw her in that hospital bed in the episode First Impressions, but I didn't think it was that serious. But I completely escaped my mind that Joan and Jay, they're in their 90s. So yeah, she's naturally at the end of her life, but it really took me off guard. But Joan ever only appeared in like one episode per season. Once during the first, once during the second season, and this season she only ever appeared on her deathbed. And it just really took me off guard to have her just pass away, like off screen and all that stuff. She wasn't a primary character, but Jay kinda was for the most part. But I digress. They're at her funeral, so it'll be Beast Boy, Brion, Static, and Wonder Girl, Cassandra, Cassie. No. I am just all over today with names. But Wonder Girl will also be involved with all of that. So they have a mission out in Cuba, so they set off late at night. Meanwhile, we find out that in order to get to their classes on the East Coast in Happy Harbor, they've been traveling from the West Coast via Tube. Specifically, Violet, Fred or Forager, and Tara. But they have to wake up like super ungodly early. But Helga Jace pulls Violet aside to let her know that, as we saw in the previous episode, where we saw that Helga Jace was studying Violet's hair and all that good stuff during during those specific episodes, Helga Jace was studying Violet's hair, and she comes to the realization that while Violet is able to heal with her healing aura, she's actually kind of deteriorating her own lifespan in doing so. Essentially, Violet is dying, but Helga says that her mentor has been going over with different ways in order to possibly help Violet. Now, who this mentor is, we very much do not know, but Helga has been in contact with that mentor here and there. So I'm really kind of wondering who Helga is in league with, who she's been studying with. because it really is up in the air whether or not Helga is a good person or a bad person. I've seen both incarnations of Helga Jace in various different media, so it could go anywhere, and it should go anywhere. Honestly, that's a big mystery at this point, but apparently Violet only has so long to live, so Helga says she'll do her best in order to figure something out, but it's obvious that news really does take a toll on Violet, as she doesn't really want to clue in anyone on her current condition. Meanwhile, Zatanna is a little pissy over the fact that only the outsiders were able to go on this specific mission in Cuba, and it even comes to a head as Zatanna goes storming off in order to join them, feeling that since they're just kids, they wouldn't be able to handle this specific situation. So Calder is having a hell of a time keeping the league together, although with the stuff he's got going on behind the scenes, that would very much tell you otherwise, as we see that in this island in Cuba, there's this massive dark energy cloud forming under it, and naturally, Clarion the Witch Boy is attached to it, as we see that he's been using magic in order to activate teens' metagenes. So all these various different ways of activating metagenes, but he's been forcing the metagenes out in various different children and all that good stuff. And this character, who is not named and has not been named, but I'm going to call them Dolphin, because they very much look like the character of Dolphin, right down to the New 52 interpretation of Dolphin, who is a mute, because we never hear this character speak at all, just kind of grunts and sighs and stuff. But as Clarion activates her metagene, she grows gills and scales and has white hair, much like Dolphin from the DC Comics. She's just of Indian origin, I think I read. But, a very interesting character who has a very wide range of abilities, honestly. Dolphin's a pretty powerful character, but because of her gills, she can only now breathe underwater. I'm guessing she doesn't know how to control that ability like an Atlantean. But Clarion brands her with his mind control mark, and then he fuses her into this massive amalgamation of all these meta kids, creating this massive behemoth of a monster. So man, some really dark stuff they keep doing with all these children. And this is the Project Rutabaga that we had actually heard Lex Luthor mentioning to Vandal Savage in the episode Evolution. So that really goes to show just, how many just different ideas are just free floating out there in this universe. But as the team has actually been spying on the events of all this and they see the giant monster, they, also notice that Cuban authorities have come in to investigate what's been going on in this section of Cuba. I mean, it's not like nobody's gonna not notice a giant weird red cloud just hanging overhead. So the team goes in with Brion kind of, gapping and just quarantining off that section of the island from the Cuban police, while Static, Wonder Girl, and Beast Boy go in to confront Clarion, who has the giant amalgamated meta-teen monster just unleashed on them. And you can see all these various kids just screaming and reaching out. It is the most disturbing thing, because as the monster roars, you hear the kids screaming in terror and fear, and it's just really messed up. And, they do their best in order not to harm the creature, as Beast Boy tries to take down Clarion by taking out his familiar Tinkle, who binds him to the material plane for the most part, although he still manages to stay corporeal. But as the military police try their best in order to, get past Brion, he manages to deny their access at every turn as they try to attempt to take down the monster. But we're then met by Zatanna coming in to help out, and she claims that in order to keep herself hidden as a member of the Justice League, she used the glamour charm in order to disguise herself. Unfortunately, while she did manage to keep herself visible to the members of the Outsider, she's also visible to a Lord of Chaos, namely Clarion. And as Beast Boy goes in order to take down Clarion, as Zatanna tries to help out the kids, Clarion seems to blast him and kill him right on the spot, and he takes down Static fairly easily, only for Clarion to be accosted by a weird green hornet that he can't seem to find. Clarion is very ADHD, he's just not focused, and that's his biggest weakness, and by having a bug just going around stinging him, he just can't seem to focus on the moment, as Cass tries her best in order to subdue the creature, and Zatanna tries to focus her magic in order to separate all the children. But Clarion is no fool, and he tries to intervene by poofing Wonder Girl into the beast as well, just really enraging the creature and setting it on a frenzy. But Zatanna manages to, bust out her spell just in time, separating all the kids and freeing them from Clarion's brand and control. She then tries her best to subdue Clarion by, summoning the power of Naboo in order to teleport both her and Clarion, as well as Tinkle, there we go, that's the name. Tinkle into the Tower of Fate of all places, where Clarion immediately starts freaking out because he's just like, oh no, I'm in Naboo territory, I gotta GT the FO right now, bro. So he tries to teleport out, but because of the nature of the Tower of Fate being one big, interdimensional clusterfuck, basically, he can't seem to get out, and he remains trapped there. And, Brion is told that he's allowed to let the military police in, with the, sergeant here or whatever just being really pissy about the whole situation. This person specifically is Ramon Barracuda, a mob boss back in the original comics, so you already know he's up to no good, just like Good Samaritan and stuff like that, characters like that who have been turned into more minor human characters but are still just evil by nature from their source material. And as the Outsiders try their best in order to comfort and see to the children, Beast Boy takes Dolphin, who can only breathe underwater, into the water so that she can be safe, and he migrates her into the bioship in order to transport her. Meanwhile, we see that Tigress is ready for Terra and Forager's lessons, but she questions why Violet isn't in attendance as well. And Terra says that she blew them off basically in order to hang out with her friend. Her friend being Harper Rowe, who in this universe, unlike the DC comics, is going down a fairly unfortunate direction. But Harper Rowe comes from a very troubled history. Her mother was killed, her father is is in and out of prison all the time in the comics, and it's just her and her little brother, who she very much looked out for in the comics. But she didn't really act out like this, where she's, off on the beach shooting guns and drinking alcohol. And wow, underage drinking, we are really not in Cartoon Network anymore. But we also come to see that, both her and Violet are just kind of going through this rebellious situation, and are even kind of, to a certain degree, kind of cheating on their boyfriends, because when Harper kisses her, she's just like, but I have a boyfriend. And Harper's just like, well, so do I. So they keep going at it. So that's a bit of a situation in and of itself. I don't know how I feel about this. Not that I'm against a relationship like this, it's just the fact that, Violet's going down a dark path by following in Harper's self-destructive tendencies, specifically drinking booze and shooting off a gun on the beach. And it even gets the attention of Officer Bethany, who is a very minor character in terms of DC Comics. She's an ex, in the comics, she was an ex-wife of Snapper Carr, and she even mentions him later on in this episode. But she, basically arrests both Violet and Harper, with Violet even, continuing to hold on to that gun and not letting it go. A very standoffish situation. But we also come to find out one of the soldiers, Maria Garcia, one of the captured kids, it was her son, Luis Garcia. But Sergeant Ramon is having, Barracuda is just having none of this. And, when it's asked of the outsiders what will happen to the children now, Garfield gives the whole spiel that, some of them they'll take back to their homes, and they'll also offer asylum to some of the kids back in Taos in order to keep them sheltered and protected. But Barracuda is just like, you have no authority here. The Justice League shouldn't even be here. And which Garfield snaps back. It's just like, hey, we're outsiders. We're not affiliated with the Justice League, keeping that plausible deniability. But Barracuda is very much having none of it. But Luis comes in, it's just like, we are all outsiders. That hashtag, because it's just like, he supports them and the fact that they saved them. They were actually there for them. Whereas the grown-ups, just continue to be so caught up in their red tape, they're letting human lives basically go to waste. Again, a very topical situation. And, all the kids start chanting, we are all outsiders, we are all outsiders. And, one of the guards is recording it and posting it to social media, because everyone has a smartphone at this point. And, while Sergeant Garcia is very much thankful to the outsiders, Barracuda is having none of it and calls in reinforcements. So she tells the outsiders they should probably leave while they still can. Meanwhile, we see a training session between Artemis and Terra, and while Terra does have some good moves, she ends up being bested by certain moves of Artemis. We come to find out as well that this is a frequent move of Deathstroke in order to pin Terra down. But we also see that Deathstroke was very abusive in terms of how he trained Terra, always beating her down whenever she failed to learn from this move, to learn to dodge, until we finally got a point where she could easily dodge this move, which pleased Deathstroke. But whereas when she failed with Deathstroke, she would be beaten down and show no mercy. Artemis shows that she's forgiving, she's helpful, she gives positive reinforcement, treats it like a learning experience. And while at first Terra is unreceptive to Artemis's kinder nature, Artemis goes on about how she was raised by a hard ass like sportsmaster, how he treated her poorly and trained her in a very rough, brutal fashion, very much like Terra, showing just how much they have in common, creating this almost, there's this ongoing bond that seems to slowly be forming between Terra and Artemis that I'm really loving and appreciating. And as it goes along, Terra starts to kind of warm up to the nicer, kinder ways of Artemis. And I'm really waiting for this to come to a head, because we are pushing that redemption of Terra finally in one form of media. Hopefully Terra will not just die tragedy and taking Deathstroke down with her. But as Megan goes in order to pick up Violet from the police precinct. She asks Bethany about what's going on with Harper, and we come to find out that yes, her dad is just as much of a deadbeat in this universe as he is in the comic books, in and out of jail, on drunk charges and all that. And Harper is just going to end up being held until later down the line. And unfortunately, because of everything that Violet is going through, Megan can't get anything through to Harper. Can't really even manage to talk to her. So a lot of things are really starting to pile up in Violet's plate that she's just completely incapable of really dealing with and coming to terms with. And as we start to close things out by seeing the bioship arrive in Taos and, unloading all the metahuman kids that were rescued, Aquaman is really proud of how far Garfield has come as things have gone along. He also notes a special case, namely Dolphin, and how she's, very much water bound. And, Aquaman notes that they don't really have the kind of facilities to keep her, safe and maintained for the most part. And now with having to figure out what they should do with Dolphin, Aquaman isn't quite sure. It's a little too much, a little too soon. Meanwhile, Eduardo Jr., with everything that's been going on, feels that it's his time to step up into actually being part of the Outsiders, as he feels that everyone is a little too distant from this issue. He feels that if someone who actually works at Taos was a part of all of this that's going on, he would have a better impact on all of the kids here at the youth center. And that contains no objections from the team as a whole. With I'm completely blanking on her name. Wendy, there we go. With Wendy actually being really hyped about him joining, especially since the Outsiders have become even bigger, as she, shows everyone to check their phone, where we come to find out that a report from Courtney Whitmore is showing that the recent rescue of all the metahuman teens from Cuba has sparked a almost revolution for the Outsiders all across the world. Whereas originally the Outsiders were only an American thing, they've now become an identity that is recognized worldwide, making them almost bigger than the Justice League to a certain degree, which catches an interesting glance from Aquaman, but a worried look from Beast Boy, who immediately shows some concern over just how big this whole thing has gotten. And that's the end of our episode, with us, closing things out on the Tower of Fate, and Clarion the Witch Boy desperately trying to make his way out of there. Now, this was a fun episode. Not the best, the whole confrontation was kind of meh, but it kind of harkened back to the earlier days of Young Justice, where we just had, random one-off missions that actually carried bigger weight later down the line. It was fun to see Clarion, especially. He's always fairly fun and interesting character to see and just interact with, and have him interact with other characters. But, honestly, I have to wonder, was the spell that got Zatanna into the Tower of Fate something that trapped her in there as well, or was she able to get out? And was this spell something she wanted to use in order to, find a way in order to free her father from the clutches of Fate? And why was Fate unable to be contacted in terms of, rescuing all these children? What exactly is fate up to, especially now that we know Naboo has such deep connections with Vandal Savage himself? Are we going to see that come into play later down the line? And especially considering that in the recent comic book series, Naboo has been shown to, while he is a Lord of Order, not be the best person around. Very dubious in a way, but definitely tell me your thoughts on this episode in the comment section below. How do you feel about the growth of the Outsiders as in terms of social media and worldwide attention? Who do you think Helga Jace's mentor is? And is her telling Violet about this, her deterioration of her cells, is that actually a evil plot by Helga Jace, or is she actually there to help? Will we be surprised in a positive or negative way when we do find out who her mentor is? And, what do you think about the passing of Joan Garrett off screen? Would you have preferred more time to get to know her, or are you more interested in finding out what Jay's doing and how he's holding up after the loss of his wife? Also, was Project Rutabaga what you thought it was? It wasn't what I thought it was. I would have never guessed they were combining children into this chimera type monster, but once Clarion's involved, it's just kind of like, yeah, okay, anything pretty much goes at that point. It really does raise a lot of questions, though, because it feels like we didn't really get any ulterior motives here or there in terms of the bad guys, or from the perspective of Batman and their secret team. We didn't really get anything there. We're just continuing to grow the development of Beast Boy as a public image and the, team that he's leading. But honestly, the biggest takeaway I got from this was the development in terms of Tara. It feels like things are really going to come to a head for her character, and I'm kind of hoping it's for the better. I've seen, I've mentioned it before, but Teen Titans, where Tara betrayed them, and Judas Contract, which was all about the betrayal of Tara. I really am wondering where that's gonna go. Is that gonna have a different outcome? Is Tara ultimately going to betray Deathstroke and join the good guy's side? I'm very interested to see where that goes. And if you are too, tell me your thoughts in the comment section below. Subscribe and hit the bell icon, that way you never miss out on another video of Young Justice Outsiders. And if you want to follow me on social media, just Google Duuz-Diz-Din. I'm everywhere, for better or for worse. And until the next video, just remember that you should never avoid warning signs. Some signs can tell you when things might be going further south than you thought. I'm Duuz-Diz-Din, and I'm going to bed. Bye-bye.